good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another in our series of collaborative webinars with Global School Alliance. The session this afternoon is run by myself and Julie, who I'm sure many of you know, and we are doing it on practical strategies for teaching and working with SEND pupils. So those of you that know me, I've been working now for nearly 5 years. I can't believe it's nearly 5 years since I left my last role, and still working in the classroom. I would say maybe every third week. I'm still teaching every week, definitely, even though that's online. Working in lots of different areas with my role and with lots of different teachers. And then I'll just quickly pass over to Julie. If Julie wants to introduce herself there. Julie?
Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Julie. I now work at Global School Alliance, but prior to that, I was 30 years a MFL teacher in the classroom. I'm also an examiner with the exam boards, both Edexcel and AQA. And now I work as Education Development Lead here at Global School Alliance, still supporting language teachers, but also broadening it into international partnerships and links abroad. So looking forward to talking to you a little bit about that later.
So obviously it's important that if you are working in a school or working in a trust or wherever you work, if you work for an LEA, that whatever you do in your school is definitely, you have to stick to the policies of your own institution and your own learners, obviously. So everything that we talk about tonight in the presentation, we're not telling you to do something, we are just suggesting that this might be an alternative way to support your learners and yourselves in the classroom. And obviously I think language teachers are one of the most sharing subjects around in teaching, because wherever you go, whoever you speak to, if they're a linguist, they will always say, oh, have you tried this, have you done this? And everybody is so great at sharing things, and it's just lovely to be in that subject. So, as usual, I've put the links to the teacher standards here. Those of you that are training, or if you're doing School Direct or Teach First, or if you're a PGCE or SCIT, I won't go through them systematically, but they are there. So that's how this session tonight links to those standards. Those of us that are joining us from Scotland, I've done the GTC, Scottish Professional Standards. So looking at the SEN Code of Practice then. These are basically the statements that are in the latest Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Code of Practice. Language and communication needs, we've got the social, emotional and mental health needs, cognition and learning needs, and sensory or physical needs. And of course, we all know that these are interwoven. You will get one student who might have some cognition needs, but may also have some language needs. You may have a student who has some emotional needs, but might have some physical needs as well. So a lot of the time, in fact, most of the time, I would say, when we're talking about an SEND pupil, we're talking about a pupil that falls into all 4 categories. So there is no kind of like way of separating them out, which I think a teacher would kind of like feel comfortable doing. However, for the purpose of this session, what I've done is I've kind of like thought about how Languagenut, as a platform, what we actually do for the 4 areas that I've just gone through there. And here you can see in red, I've highlighted them. And mainly for me, when I was teaching full-time in the classroom, as I did for 33 years, and I've taught kind of part-time, I probably do about 7 to 8 hours of teaching now in my role that I do, and because I only work 3 days, I also work extra time with students in class as well, or remotely. And so if I'm using any resources, if I'm using Languagenut, I think for me it's about being able to adapt the resources quite quickly, and not having that overwhelming feeling for the students in the classroom, and being able to use the multisensory tools that Languagenut has, with the different audios, the visual, and the kind of different activities that we have on our platform. So I've broken them down into the 4 areas. So for the language and communication needs, again, I think for us, and I'm not going to read these through each line for you, because you can look at this. If you're a trainee, this might be useful for you in terms of what you're planning, or maybe an assignment that you have to do. But it's certainly great for pupils that I've taught, being able to pair the written and spoken word together. That's been very powerful in being able to do that in progressing and being able to help them with their language. And particularly this non-judgmental way of being able to speak, so they can actually be at home or in an area in the classroom. They can if you've got that opportunity to put them in a corner, or maybe at home they're speaking into the device that they're using and there's nobody listening to them. And also the fact that the teacher can give audio feedback. So on our admin area, you can write your feedback to the student or you can record it. And I think some students benefit having that recorded feedback rather than having to read through things. I found that's been quite powerful for a lot of pupils that I've taught. With the SEMH needs, I think if pupils can work at their own pace and being able to celebrate their success with their kind of like, they've seen the points on the system, they can have the unlockable badges, and it's being able to see that some of the work is auto-marked. Obviously, the listening and reading is auto-marked on our platform. The writing and speaking, not so much, because obviously everybody produces a different outcome. But it has been very powerful for those students. In my evidence that I've seen from my students that I've been teaching with those kind of needs. Any pupils that have had the cognition needs, having that gamified content has helped them with their learning, and having the levels that they can have, you can set them a small achievable goal rather than give them something massive to do. They can do it at their own pace, at their own time. They can keep going back to it. And also for the sensory or physical needs of pupils, they can actually slow the audio down with the snail button. We've got the overlays that you can customize now for pupils that might need that with bigger script and so on, and then being able to pause or repeat the activities as many times as they want before they actually take the quiz. So from my evidence, not my opinion, but what has worked best for me in my classroom and what still continues to work best for me with pupils that have got some needs that you might need to address, in particular for this session, SEND. Clear expectations are important. So what to expect in your lesson. So giving them that predictability. So again, going back to Languagenut, everything is structured. They know exactly what to expect. And I will reference that throughout with little drops in of language references back to Languagenut, but I've already gone with 4 or 5 slides there showing you how our platform links to the SEND outcomes and the SEND type of learner. So I've always made sure that my pupils know where the learning fits in, and here you can see part of a learning journey. You can have a huge learning journey from 7 to 11, or it can be a short one for each unit of work. I can't say how many of these I've got so many of these, which I've used in different ways with pupils, but certainly in terms of an SEND pupil, they've enjoyed having that in their book, or just having one maybe section of it at the beginning of each unit to tick off as they've moved along, so that they feel that they are getting somewhere with their learning, and so they know what they're learning, why they're learning it. And often I'll tell them how they're going to learn it today. So that might be part of my lesson outcome when I start a lesson. I'll say, this is what we're doing today, why we're doing it. We're doing it for a particular reason, and then how we're going to learn. So giving them those short, clear and precise targets to be able to work through in a lesson also helps. I remember I've had quite a lot of students who said to me, is it possible, Miss, to write my kind of targets down on the board, or at least give us the kind of like things that we're going to be using today during the board and on the board, and then we can tick them off as we've gone through them. And that has actually helped. It doesn't help everybody in the class. And remember, sometimes pupils who don't have learning needs of any kind that fit into the SEND, although most students do at some stage in their careers, you'll find that having that to be able to say, right, we've done that today, class, we've done that today, and move on, so that the students can see where they are moving in their learning. It helps to give your pupils that open your books and write the day, open your books and just put this in your book, open your books and make sure that you've made a kind of notice to the topic for today. It's just giving them those clear instructions that will tell them straight away what they need to do at the beginning of the lesson, or at the relevant time in the lesson, that they need to move on to another activity. Giving them examples as well and clear models. Or Waggle, if you're not familiar with that, was being used for many years. It's what a good one looks like. So you might find that some of your pupils will benefit having examples of what a good one would look like. What is it that they are actually aiming to achieve by the end of this lesson, by the end of this series of lessons, or whatever time scale you've set out. So the routines are really important for pupils. Knowing their names as well is a really difficult thing at the beginning of the year when you've got so many classes with so many different pupils in, and if you're new to a school it makes it even more difficult. But having some way of making sure that you are knowing the names of the students who are the most vulnerable ones in your class. Having your starter and finisher kind of like activities planned, and that's where I'll try and show you some examples tonight of what I do for some that are very quick to do and some that I kind of can just pull on literally at a second's notice. As I said earlier, having a kind of like list of activities that you're covering during a lesson helps. And sometimes having those time indicators that in this particular activity, we're not going to spend more than 10 minutes, or this activity is going to be 5 minutes. Obviously, you're not going to sit there with a timer making sure that you're sticking to that. But it just helps to have that kind of like support for your students so that they know what to expect and it becomes more predictable. And I try to include, not always successfully, as many different skills in the lesson as possible, because when you are speaking in the target language, whether you realise it or not, it's a listening skill. Just by putting something up on the board that I have to read is reading. So again, just to try and ring the changes that the pupils get different activities during the lesson. So some of the things that I've done, and again, I said earlier that they do interleave. So a lot of these are going to be relevant for all the different SEND types of learners that we've already highlighted at the beginning of the session. All these are tried and tested and ones that I've done. So having a silent read aloud where the pupils put their fingers in their ears is really good, because nobody is having to feel that they're on the spot if they're all sticking their fingers in their ears and reading aloud. Reading aloud behind a mask or dressing up is something that I know, if you've attended any of my sessions before, I do use it a lot in my sessions, but I also use it a lot in my teaching, and it becomes quite routinized for a lot of the pupils and they enjoy doing it, and it's something that they ask for because they can do it behind a mask. And you can do different types of masks. There's loads and loads of different ideas that you can use there. Reading along with the transcript again works well, and we have the transcripts for all our listening material on the Languagenut website. If you turn the sound down and they carry on reading from the transcript, what word did they get to? And again, your students might not have to necessarily put their hand up, but the ones who can't do that because they're lacking in confidence, they can still point to the word on the script and see whether they've actually got the answer right or not. Lip syncing to music practices the reading in safety, and there's lots of different websites that you can access really nice songs on to do this. And again, please ask if you're not sure of any, we can give you some ideas. And then singing along, stopping the song, writing the word is something that I've done many times with pupils. I've had a video in the background of a pop song that's from the language, and basically I've stopped the song and they have to find the word. The transcript might even be in front of the pupils or even be on the board as they are actually having to do that activity. But at the end of the day, it's giving them that kind of like support that they need to be able to have a go, rather than just be sitting there thinking, I don't want to do this. I've always had a real rule with myself, that I've had a rule of 9. I've never done more than 9 pieces of vocabulary with a class at a time, because I find that particularly when you've got a group of pupils who need that extra support, who are deemed to be vulnerable, 9 words is probably enough, because you can play 3-3-3, you can play tic-tac-toe, you can play noughts and crosses, you can play what goes where, you can play any kind of game that you can. And pupils are really good at remembering 9 because it's just 3-3-3. And that way, I've always tried to stick to 9. I've usually ruled out cognates, and I've usually ruled out any words that they've already know or they could guess the meaning of. I usually try to stick to words that are really either don't look like anything like the English does, or words that they've not seen before, because that I feel then that I'm not giving them 3 cognates and 6 new words. I've just found that 9 words works well with pupils that need a little bit of support with learning. One thing that pupils do enjoy is a bit of competition. So with speed of retrieval, what I've done there is I've maybe set them some vocabulary in week 2 of half term 1, and I've said, right, I want you to see how quickly you can remember these words from the board. I'll give you 1 minute to do them, and I want you to write them down in your book. So they've done that, and then the next time we've done it, maybe a few more minutes into the lesson, we've put a timer on, and they've had to see how quickly they can write them down. And the time that they get to when they get to look up and see the clock, or you might have some timers that you use in your classroom, or some other way of recording the time, they write it in the margin. And then I say, right, I want you to label that vocab week 2, half term 1. And then we go back to it maybe 3 weeks later. And as a starter activity, I've said to them, right, let's just go back to week 2, half term 1, have a look at that vocab, and I'll put it back up on the board, and I'll say to them, right, on this particular day you did this vocab, and I want you to see if you can beat your score that you got in that week. So again, they have another few minutes to look at it, maybe a minute, and then they have to try and remember it as much as they can, write it down, and they then look at their record that they had in the previous time of doing those vocab, that list of vocab, and see if they've beaten it. And it just gives them that competing against themselves. You have to be quite organised to do this, but when I was in the classroom, in the role that I had, I used to use it. We used to use it school-wide, and we would have the particular grammar vocab on the platform for Languagenut. We would make these particular bespoke vocab lists for each of our weeks of our scheme of work, and we would sort of use that as a way of being able to track progress and whether students were doing their either learning homework or whether they were just remembering certain items of vocab, and which items of vocab were causing us the most problem. Here you'll see a reading window, which is just simple. It's a piece of card with a piece of plastic over it, which is actually left over from an acetate, those of us that remember the days of overhead projectors. And basically I've got different ones of these of different sizes, and again you can give these out according to what you feel your students would need, of how much of a piece of German or French or Spanish they could actually maybe read aloud or translate. And it's just giving you that sort of support, the students who need more support with less to read than someone who might be able to cope with a bigger sentence or a longer paragraph. And then going back to what I said earlier about being able to track how they're doing, and also understand where there are problems and gaps in their learning, this is an example of a personal learning checklist. And again, I can't tell you how many I've got of these. I've got umpteen of them for different topics based on whatever it is you're doing, and it just helps the students keep a track of where they feel they're going with their learning and where their gaps are. Okay, so those are some of the things that you can try, and these things are some of the things that I do when I'm actually in a classroom. So this giant floorboard game is something that I did about 2 months, maybe, where are we now? It was about 2 months before the summer holidays. Turned the classroom into a life-size board with coloured squares. Every square had a symbol, so we're just big sheets of card. And then basically the pupils became the game pieces, moving around and acting out or saying the words as they landed on them. And this was for a particular low ability Year 9 class. And they loved it because they loved being able to move around and just be able to do that as a classroom. We just put all the chairs and tables to the side. Again, it's a bit more difficult if you are in a space where you can't move the desks, I understand that, so it might be something that you have to maybe swap a room or maybe go into a bigger space to do it, but it does work. A way of being able to introduce vocabulary is to introduce tasting and smelling of vocab, particularly when you're doing food samples or scented objects for sensory vocab lessons for like vanille, la vanille, or le chocolat. Again, you've got to be mindful of any allergies that your students have got, but it's just another way that I've used of being able to sort of get vocabulary and words into students' heads that need that bit of support. The language pet therapy is something that I've done with primary. I've never tried this with secondary, but I've done it with primary, where the pupils brought in their own actual stuffed toys, and we did target language, like, you know, come here, sit down, put your hand up, and we did the kind of like imperatives using that, and that worked really well. We did a whole half term work on that with kind of like them bringing in their language, their little pets and things, their stuffed toys. The word hunt is one which is very popular, where you give QR codes, you put them around the classroom or a certain learning area, and you place hidden links to words around the classroom. So they go up with their device, they have to scan it, and then they record themselves saying the word, and then they come up with a string of words and they have to make that into a sentence. That's really good for pairs and for threes. Where you might have one student who's sitting there waiting for the word to come back, one goes around with the device and the other one is hunting for the QR codes. That again is very popular. This is a nice calming one for if you've whipped them up and you want to bring them back down again, that they've got to try and translate emoji sentences into the target language. So here you'll see je mange une pomme, and they quite like coming up with these themselves. Sometimes I give this as a homework and they have to try and come up with 5, or if some students can manage more, I'll say, right, you can try 5, see if you can get 7, see if you can get more, and then they bring those to the lesson and we swap them in the classroom, or you just take them in and use them as a starter for a plenary for another lesson. Again, this next one is something I've never done at secondary, but I'm mindful of the fact we may well have primary colleagues with us tonight, that this is like a primary language sensory tent, where you have like a small pop-up tent from somewhere like IKEA, or you manage to get one on Facebook or somewhere, and you set it up as a little language immersion bubble, and pupils have absolutely loved that, particularly sort of the younger ones in year 3 and 4 and 5. Year 6 tend to be a little bit more, I'm not going in there, I'm not sitting in that tent, but I have known the odd student in year 6 have a go at that, and that's worked really well, and it kind of gives language as a presence within the classroom, or at least within that learning area of where those students are learning their normal lessons. Interactive story walls is something that I've done for many years, ever since I started teaching, and we used to do it with chalk, if that tells you how, when I first started teaching in 1987, but covering a wall in my classroom or in a corridor with a giant comic or story strip, and now making it with laminated, you know, blank spaces or speech bubbles, and the pupils can use pre-made ones if you've got some with Velcro or blue tack on, and again you can just keep recycling those, or they can write their own phrases if you've got a pen where they can just rub it off, and they can walk through the story and role play it, and it's great for different role plays. It's great for students if you've got students who want to come back in and help you to actually make the story well and change it or do whatever you want, but it does really help a lot with students who quite like to be out of their seats and doing things. And then the giant human sentence builder, again, I think is something which we've all probably had, where you give your pupils some word cards and they line up across the room to become a sentence, and then the other pupils have to read the sentence aloud, and then they swap roles. So you might have 6 students at the front, they've all got a different card, you give them 30 seconds to get into the correct order, and then the rest of the class read aloud the sentence. They can do it in their head, they can do it just by miming it without any words coming out of their mouth, or they can say it, depending upon what they feel they can do and how confident they are. Building a word with Lego, again, I've tried this with secondary and it works really well. If you've got some plastic Lego bricks that somebody can donate to you, and I always used to ask in briefing in the morning or in staff meetings if we had them, or send an email out and ask if anybody had anything like this, that you could just bring it and leave it, pop it into my room and just keep reusing it. So they're building towers, spelling the target language words. Another variation of that is to have 2 sets of magnets or letter cards. You can make those and keep them, just use them year on year, put them into an elastic band. You put your class into groups, and it's something you can quickly do as a plenary at the end of a lesson or a mid-session, whatever you want to do it. If you want to have a bit of time out and you want a bit of fun in the lesson, you call out a word. It could be one that you're retrieving, it could be one that you've just learned that lesson, and they have to spell it out. Put the hand up when they're done, and the group has to say the word out loud, or someone in the group has to spell it, and they get points when they've done that. A passport adventure is something where the students have got a passport, and now, particularly for EdExcel, where they have brought in the role plays again for the 10 topics, you might be able to say, right, we're going to be doing a trip to the hospital, unfortunately, or we've got a trip to the shops, and they've got to be able to say a certain number or record a certain number of phrases related to that place, and they get a stamp or a sticker in their passport. And this doesn't have to be anything posh. It can just be a piece of card in their book, or something that they keep in their planner or whatever. It just builds that sense of progress. And then, similar to the word wall, but having the word graffiti wall or tablecloth, or a t-shirt even, is stuff where the students can write words on it, and you can just fold that up and just keep it for the next lesson and bring it out again, or bring it out again in a few weeks' time. I always was very organised in my classroom. I used to have a box per class at the front of the classroom. Luckily, if you were teaching in your own classroom, that was great. In the latter years, I wasn't, but during the main part of my teaching, I was, and I would be able to just pop stuff in there for each class so that I knew what I'd got in there, and I could just whip it out if I needed to do something as a quick start or a plenary or even a main part of the lesson, so the students could, have that continuity with what they've been working on. Another way of doing that is a hat of destiny, where you have a magic hat that contains lots of nouns, verbs, phrases, whatever, on bits of paper, and then you pick out a slip, and the class or individuals have got to do something with that. And the pile of destiny is very similar to that, and it's something that I've been talking about the other day with a teacher on Facebook who was asking me about it with a few teachers. Whenever we came across a word or a phrase that we didn't know, I'd write it on a piece of paper, or I would delegate a student in the class to write it for me, and that delegation would change depending on what lesson it was, so everybody got a chance to do the writing, because that's practicing. And then I would put these in a pile at the front of my lesson, and then in the box, and then at the end of a lesson I'd whip them out if I needed to do some work with the class, if I'd run out of time or I didn't have a chance to prepare as much of the lesson as I would have. And we've all been there, right? And then I'd say, right, can we remember what this is? And they would write it on the whiteboards. Then that would go to the back of the pile, and then the next one would come out. And that way you are going through all the vocab that that class has had problems with, and where the gaps you can just keep adding to it when you find the gaps in their learning. And it starts to then drip feed in and become much more, they're practicing it more. Obviously, we've got things I've talked about before with the talking mirrors. I always had, for my departments, a set of timers and a set of mirrors, because I always found that the mirrors were great for students to just look at themselves and speak in the mirror and be able to get that pronunciation correct and be able to become more confident at being able to face somebody. Even though they're facing themselves, they're actually facing somebody, so that when they're in that speaking exam, they're not going to go, I'm not used to talking to somebody opposite me. They're talking to themselves, but that's okay. Upside down reading, having words upside down, it's just the kids quite enjoy. Some of them you'll see will tilt their head, as I'm doing now, to look at it, and you might not think that's actually a big thing, but for some pupils who need that movement, it is a big thing, and you're giving them permission to turn their head upside down to look at it. Some pupils will take the mick with that, I understand that, but that's a different story. It's all about how you get on with your pupils and how you actually empower them to learn and to do that kind of fun stuff in safety. Tracing the words in the air or on the partners' backs, if that's something you can tolerate them to do, because I know some students, if you tried to do that, they'd probably turn around and slap their partner over, give them a bit of a hit. So you've got to be careful with that. But that is something that I kind of like, I suppose, encouraged, not the hitting, but the encouraging to do this kind of activity in their lesson. And then obviously when you're practicing your vocab, I always go, I say it first, then you say it silently in your head, which the class will do. They'll mime it, so then we'll just go without any word coming out. Then they might whisper it, then we'll whisper it together. Then we'll say it out loud, and then we might speak it with our eyes closed or with our fingers in our ears, and then we might have our eyes open and still be kind of like not sure about saying it, and we'll do it loud, we'll do it soft, just to give them that kind of feeling that they're not in it on their own and nobody's listening to them and taking the mick. And then I might even do that again, practicing it alone in their pairs. I might say, right, I want you to think about it with your partner, think pair share, that's been around a very long time, and then give me the answer. And those of you that have listened to me speak before will have known about my concert bands, that they do help SEND learners. They are tried and tested, that students do like to have verbs in yellow, maybe nouns in orange, positive sentences in blue, and so on. And again, I can go over how to use those till the cows come home, but I won't necessarily do that tonight because I'm aware that Julie needs to speak as well. I'm just going to quickly finish off my 2 sessions, Julie, here, and then I will hand over to you. So here we've got something that we developed when I was in my last trust with the help of a couple of colleagues, whereby we had, and these are great for if you've got student staff off or you need to set cover work. You can see here students can choose what they want to do. There are different activities there, but it's all on the same topic. And then here is something that we did in one of our sessions a couple of years ago, I think, where you might have some students who are needing the really scaffolded sentence structures on the left, and then some who just need the verbs and the adjectives writing in a much more open way to be able to write a piece of Spanish. I'm going to move on from that because that's dead straightforward. If you want to look through that, that will give you an easy way. It's basically an idiot's guide to how to use consequences, and nobody in it on here is an idiot tonight. It's just for me saying that this is how you do it.
Perfect. So when we were planning the session for today, we were talking about what would be a great idea to kind of the message that we want to get across, and Elaine was very much just then looking at the practical activities that you can use within your classrooms. What I want to have a little talk about now is the wider aspect of being a language teacher and what we can bring to our students, particularly our SEND students, for who might find the actual language learning tricky. And so what can we provide for them in terms of culture, experiencing the country of the language that they're learning, and developing skills far beyond academic achievement. And I introduced myself earlier, and I work for the Global School Alliance. And really our mission here is to develop global connections around the world. And it's great to see so many people online this evening from not the UK. I see we've got somebody from Gibraltar, somebody from Romania, Thailand, or was it Indonesia, beg your pardon. And so really it's about the opportunities we can offer to our students that's going to develop them, their character, develop their values and their life skills. And what I want to share with you is some things around the work that we do with international links, international projects, collaboration, and that intercultural understanding that we can give to our students. That's going to give them the skills to contribute meaningfully in a future where it's really a more global society. So the world that they're going out into is going to need some of these skills as well. And so a little bit about the Global School Alliance there, that we do work with schools in over 140 countries. I'll give you some links that you can follow later on and have a little look at our community. You can join for free, so you can come along and see the kind of things that we do. But we're here to support schools to actually provide these wonderful opportunities for your students. So the reason that I'm here and the reason that I'm talking about this is why do we want to establish a partnership in the first place? And this isn't, I know we're focusing on special SEND students this afternoon, but really it's about what it can bring to the whole school, so all of our students can benefit from this. Benefit from, yes, it enriches our language lessons, it enriches diet that we're giving them and gives them so much more than the language skills. It allows us to embed those global dimensions and those real world opportunities for our students. Authentic communication with native speakers really helps to give them that confidence. It allows them to practice the language that they're learning. It gives that real authentic experience and a real purpose to the language. But not only, I know I'm talking to language teachers this afternoon, but think about how it can join together with other subject areas. So around art, around geography, around science, and how we can actually really come together and really develop those global competencies. And another strand of what we do here at Global School Alliance is the immersive travel experiences. So yes, we organise trips and visits, but they're not just trip or a visit. They're an immersive experience. We really pride ourselves in the visits that we organise are school to school. So your students can go along and actually experience what it's like to go to school in Spain, to go to school in Mexico, to be a student in China or Japan. And so they're the things that I think are really, really important, and that we are here to develop at the Global School Alliance as well, to help you with that. Okay, let me see if I can get on to the next slide. There we go. So why does it matter? Why do international links and visits matter for SEND learners? So focusing on why it's important, not just for the whole school, but what does it bring for our SEND learners? And I think it brings them a unique set of opportunities, and it makes them, what makes these experiences powerful is the way that they transform what we're doing in the classroom into those experiences with real purpose and real audiences. So instead of just writing for you, the teacher, because you've asked them to write in their exercise books, they might be sending a postcard abroad. They might film a short video of them greeting and saying hello. They might create a mini project or send a Christmas card. And it also allows students with potentially literacy challenges. They can contribute through images, through videos where they're speaking rather than writing extended text, and suddenly their work has powerful meaning, and that can be incredibly motivating, especially for those pupils who perhaps aren't really that engaged with more traditional tasks. Accessibility and differentiation are also central. We can create projects so that our SEND pupils can contribute at their own level. They can shine through the practical, the oral, visual outputs, and not just the written work. This means that their confidence and their communication skills will grow naturally. They can take part in pen pal exchanges, as I've said before, video greetings, introducing their school, and it all provides those safe, structured opportunities to practice what they've learned in a really supportive way. We also have a program of hosting, and we really encourage reciprocal visits. So again, when your school hosts visitors from your partner school or from abroad, SEND pupils can really thrive, particularly in that buddy situation. If they want to be a buddy, if they want to take on that role, it helps to build their social confidence, their empathy, their pride, their belonging, and being part of the school community and really showing off their work and their school. And it gives them that sense of belonging, and they really, SEND students really benefit from experiential learning. So all of this taking part and having that communication allows them to share their strengths. It levels the playing field. It shows that they have just as much to contribute as all of the other students at their school. And the research into global links consistently shows motivational impact. And for SEND learners in particular, these opportunities can be transformational. It boosts their self-esteem, it boosts their communication skills, and as I said before, their sense of belonging. Okay, so our next slide. So a little bit of evidence there. I won't spend too long looking at that. It was just there has been some research done into how global and international links really do benefit. So there's some there from the Education Development Trust, from Global School Partnerships, and from the School Partnerships Alliance, who really recommend that SEN pupils be included in these partnership programs because it does give them a real sense of achievement. So if you could connect your students to anywhere in the world tomorrow, where would it be? Because here at Global School Alliance, we can offer you the opportunity to really, really develop and go to wherever you'd like to do. And just looking for my next slide. Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to go back one. It's really a bit tricky at the moment. There we go. So I wanted to introduce you to one of our case studies here at the Global School Alliance, and this is the Brooks School on Broadwaters, which is it's a special needs school in London. And last year they had two partner schools in the Marseille region of the south of France. One was an elementary, a primary school, and the other one was a college in France, which goes up to the end of year 9, 10. And they went out there and they took 5 students and they'd actually successfully applied for Turing funding. So they'd applied for Turing funding. Their school in London is actually part-time unit, part-time mainstream as well. They applied for the Turing funding. For those of you who don't know what Turing funding is, it's a pot of money here in the UK that we can apply for with a particular focus on SEND and disadvantaged students. So it's absolutely amazing. It's quite a lengthy process to apply for that. But if you're successful, it provides that levelling up for your SEND and your disadvantaged students. And the Brooks School here was successful in their application bid, and they went for 4 days, fully funded, and they were able to fund one-to-one support for each of the 5 students that they took. And as you can see from these photographs, they were with their peers in the school over there. They were playing in the playground. They took part in cookery sessions and gaming sessions, and they just had an absolute blast. Now, the GSA, we supported over 40 schools last year to secure Turing funding. And as I said to you just before, it's absolutely amazing because it allows you, it covers the costs associated with the SEND, with it allowed the students here fully funded, and it also covers essential equipment, transport, and support needed for the placement as well. So if you do teach SEN students, or if you've got a large proportion of disadvantaged students within your school, it's a really wonderful pot of money. And that comes out, applications usually in the new year, around about February, March time. So that was just a little case study for you. And just to finish off, I won't take up too much of your time now. I'm nearly finished. I've got one more slide. Just a couple of things that we can offer you here at Global School Alliance, just before we finish. We do have free access to our platform where you can go on and start to be part of our community, take part in our competitions. It's all free to take part. We've just run a wonderful European Day of Languages competition. It doesn't close until the 17th of October, so there's still time for you to get on board with that. And we have entries from across the world. I think we've had over 500 schools globally take part in that this year. We do then have membership options. You can join with other schools on a table, a round table, a virtual table, or you can have a one-to-one sister school partnership. As I mentioned before, you can host. If you're not ready to commit to a partnership yet, you can welcome students into your school. We do offer CPD and training. I'm working with Elaine this evening. I do also offer CPD and training for MFL teachers myself. We also train in international coordinators. We have a wonderful school council that you can get involved with if that's something that you'd like to get involved in as well. We do online conferences, events, awards, challenges and competitions. And I have mentioned already that we offer transformational travel, and that can be for anybody. Next week or the week after next, I'm actually going over to Spain with a group of 5 leaders and teachers, because we run leadership delegations. So you can come over and we take you to have the experience yourself to see whether or not it's something that you'd like your students to get involved in. So you can go and do all your risk assessments before you actually organise your visit. So that's just us in a nutshell. I just wanted to kind of give across that message that really we can offer so much more than just the language. And don't get me wrong, I am so passionate about languages, but it's the culture and that international dimension and the cultural capital that we can offer our students as well to really develop those skills that they're going to need as future global citizens. So thank you. I've finished there.
Thank you.
That's how you can get in touch with me, and you can sign up for the Global School Alliance as well. As I said, it's free to join, so please join us. And if you've got any questions or if you want to get in touch with me about anything, then you've got my email address on there as well. Thank you, everybody. Pass back to Elaine.
Thank you. And then obviously at the end here, we've got any more inquiries that you have. You can email us at enquiries@languagenut.com. We've also got our Facebook, Instagram and X handles there. My email address is elaine@languagenut.com. If you have enjoyed tonight's session or you feel that you've found some interesting ideas, either from myself or from Julie, that you feel you might be able to use, or certainly things that you'd be interested in going back to your school with or talking to your colleagues about, then please give us a shout out on social media, whether that's on Facebook, on Instagram or on X or Blue Sky, wherever it is that you put your comments, if you do any, and hopefully you've gained some bit more from the beginning of the session now that you have a little bit more than what you had at the start. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Elaine. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.